Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest record from Ty Segall called Freedom's Goblin. You know, at this point of Ty Segall's career, I've pretty much given up on having any expectations. His sound and rock has careened across a half dozen different genres, from lo-fi garage to more ornate psychedelic tones, with plenty of twisted sounds and ideas at the core of it all, and an uncanny knack for really great melodies and hooks. And yet, I'll be honest, it's been a while since I've really loved a Ty Segall record. The closest is probably Manipulator back in 2014, but both Emotional Mugger in 2016 and the self-titled record last year felt lyrically undercooked, and the cohesion in the sound was starting to slip too. Now, it didn't mean he couldn't put together good individual songs, but given that he was now facing some serious competition in the garage rock space for me with Ron Gallo, I wanted to hear Ty Segall push a little harder to just bring it all together. And to my amazement, I think he might have actually stepped up with something, as Freedom's Goblin was a 19-track double album clocking around 75 minutes that was reportedly spraying its stylistic influences even further afield, which, yeah, was kind of concerning given the cohesion issues on his self-titled release last year, but there was nothing saying he couldn't tie it all together, and when you consider that he somehow got Steve Albini back on board to co-produce parts of this, it did feel like a vote of confidence for me. Steve Albini doesn't work with slouches, at least not more than once, and yet still, I was wary about a double album coming here. But you know what? I had some hope. It could be something special, and with a little bit more runtime, maybe Ty Segall could really flesh out a solid set of lyrical ideas. So, alright, how is Freedom's Goblin? Well, honestly, it was initially tough for me to tell. It's hard to doubt Ty Segall's ambition with Freedom's Goblin, and the more that I sat with this record, the more that I thought I should like this a fair bit, and really I do, but I've been struggling with it. And the quandary with that is that whether or not it's rooted in my preference for his older, rougher sounds, or issues of this project specifically on their own. And thus, after giving this hour-plus record another few listens, honestly, it's some of both. I wouldn't chart this being among my favorites from Ty Segall. Slaughterhouse has nothing to worry about, but I think I understand it a little bit better, and I can appreciate some of the weirder choices that were made with this record. So let's start off with those, shall we? Because right from the opening song, you get the feeling that something is oddly amiss. The garage rock fuzzed out riffs, they're there, the good hook is there, as is most of Ty Segall's nasal drawl, but now there's horns and a feeling that the overall mix is sharper and cleaner, especially in that vocal pickup. And if you're expecting this album to adhere to any sort of consistent through line when it comes to the overall sound, Freedom's Goblin is there to shatter your expectations. Because on the very next song, Rain, the groove trembles and lumbers forward on pianos, blaring horns, and vocal overdubs that remind me more of a Muse song than anything else. And a song later, we got a garage rock cover of a Hot Chocolate song from the late 70s, and they were an English soul band. And that highlights the careening dichotomies that come through a lot of this record. The gurgling, nightmarish funk of Despoiler of Cadaver, with that massive bass line contrasting with the smoother, borderline acoustic soft rock of songs like Cry 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 and I'm Free. Then you got the hardcore scuzz of Meaning featuring Ty Segall's wife Danae on lead vocals, in a track that's borderline Riot Girl, and it's not far removed from the Beatles-esque overdubs of My Lady's on Fire. And in the most stark example, one after the other, we have the garish piano-inflected The Last Waltz that breaks into the grinding shred of She, which probably owes most of its hallmarks to early metal, and only really has any connective tissue coming through in the keyboard line, and even then, that's barely there. Now, here's the thing. More often than not, Segall, he sticks the landing with a lot of his genre experimentation, at least when it comes to the composition. He can still write one hell of a melody line that will always have prominence in the mix in some form, and his stabs at funk and disco on Despoiler of Cadaver, or soft rock or on I'm Free, or even the sleaziest form of sax-inflected glam rock on The Main Pretender, they are just as compelling as his more conventional garage stomp of Shoot You Up and 5 Feet Tall. And while the closing remake of his old song Sleeper as a 12-minute sinuous monster of garage rock and Goodnight, that can drag just a little bit, it still has much of the texture and melodic tone that's always made Ty Segall so damn compelling for me in indie rock. And it's a damn shame that that greater sense of dynamics just doesn't come through with this album in the same way in a lot of the production. Some of this I will tack up to the extremely clean vocals. Yeah, it highlights how Segall's falsetto has improved on songs like You Say All the Nice Things, but when you have the buzzed out chunks of riff and gurgling bass that picks up a lot more texture, the cleaner vocals don't quite feel as cohesive in contrast. And that's really the larger case with a lot of the mix as well, where it seems like the cleaner, overdubbed focus don't let the garage rock elements bleed into a noisier but more cohesive live tone, which means the more slapdash element don't really have the cover to slide past me. And this becomes an issue when you have so many guitar and horn phrases that could use that thicker mix as they are more staccato, or at the very least a more consistent low-end groove foundation for the more jagged elements. And as much as I might like the solos on songs like Fanny Dog and Alta and You Say All the Nice Things and I'm Free, it's hard to deny that there aren't moments of indulgence like the scuzzed out pileup of an interlude on Prison, which somehow gets even worse with the horns on Talking 3, probably my least favorite track here. But again, if only by volume, there are better songs than duds on this project, at least in the composition, which takes us to the writing. And look, I'm not gonna mince words with this, I've always preferred Ty Segall's more developed and detailed lyrics. The guy has a knack for detail that in the past couple of years has really been underserved for me. He's got a strong singer-songwriter side, and sadly, a lot of that is the case for this project too. And with 19 songs running over an hour, it's not like he was short on space, and a lot of these songs do kind of feel underwritten. Now, it also means that tracing any sort of particular theme becomes a little tricky and scattershot, especially as you can tell that Segall is delighting in throwing me curveballs. Fanny Dog could be interpreted as brazenly sexual until you realize he's talking about his actual dog. And Alta is a surprisingly earnest tune about preserving the environment, but it could well play as just a straightforward love song. But if I were to sketch a theme of some sorts, it would circle back to that question of freedom and the consequences that that freedom could bring. And it helps that Ty Segall has always been very canny in his framing, not afraid to paint himself as craven or ugly as anybody else that he's talking about, which is probably the best thing he could have done on a record that's chock full of pre, during, and post-breakup songs. And that's before you remember his estrangement from his mother to add a twisted Oedipal element to songs like When Mommy Kills You. And none of the conclusions that Segall draws around freedom are especially pretty for anyone involved. When asked to prop up archaic systems on meaning, Danae screams through the flimsy justifications that they put out. There's not a lot there, the meaning is shit. But there's also a feral side to total freedom that manifests on Despoiler of Cadaver and Shoot You Up, or the apocalyptic derangement of The Last Waltz. What becomes apparent is that when so many crave freedom from relationships or society or toxic people, they want to use it to avoid consequences or self-reflection. But when you have that freedom, there's nowhere else to turn but inwards, and that can drive some people crazy. And with so many relationships on this album as codependent, slow motion self-destruction, without that reflection, you get songs like Rain or My Lady's on Fire or Cry Cry Cry, where there will not be any turning back. It's gonna end. But you know what? Considering how triumphant songs like I'm Free and 5 Feet Tall feel, maybe Ty Segall is presenting it that it might be for the best after all. But as a whole, I can see some Ty Segall fans thinking this is a tough record to really process as a double album. It sure as hell was for me, especially as there are big ideas at play and solid melodic compositions, but not always executed in the best of ways. I appreciate how an album like this will open up a ton of doors for Segall going forward, but it's hard not to feel like I would appreciate this project a little more if more time was given to the production and writing to flesh it out with a little bit more detail and texture. This doesn't feel nearly as undercooked as his self-titled project last year, but I'm attributing more to that to talent from him that's just expanding than time spent in this refinement. And as such, for me, you know what, I still like it. It's a solid 7 out of 10 and a recommendation. You could certainly do worse in this brand of indie rock than what Ty Segall brings to the table, and he can certainly execute his bigger ideas, but ironically, the title might as well refer to the record itself. Free to go off in any direction, but yet with a cost that keeps it just shy of greatness. At least for me. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. As always, you want to buy the record, links in the description below. And the polls up there. You know what, Ty Segall's put up so much stuff. I'm curious where his die-hard fans will fall on this. He probably will still love it, but I don't know, in comparison with so much of the other stuff he's put out, I'm not sure it's quite as great as his best. Beyond that, if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process, the link to my Patreon is right over there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once a week for the higher tier contributors, you guys get to add albums, movies, or even a top 10 list to that schedule. More details right over there. Happy to get you guys on board. You want to see what my schedule currently is right now? Check my Instagram, links in the description below. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.